Welcome back, infrastructure and security architects. Today, we're tackling a really critical milestone. This is part 6 of our 10-part explainer series on IPv4 and IPv6 transition technologies. Look, we're operating in a landscape where the perimeter has fundamentally shifted, and frankly, your expertise is needed now more than ever. So, it's time to set aside the basics and get highly precise about securing the networks of today and tomorrow.
Our deep dive today is sourced directly from a really comprehensive tutorial by Virtualization Options LLC, which is a Colorado-based technology research, education, and advisory organization. And to be specific, we are looking strictly at Chapter 6. That means we're laser-focused on the critical architecture, security profiles, and firewall design components that you, as architects, absolutely must master to support your organization's migration safely. We're not going to rehash the earlier chapters. We're jumping straight into the advanced operational characteristics.
Okay, let's dive right into this. We'll start with the coexistence imperative, clearly define the transition mechanisms, and unpack the very real dual-stack danger. From there, we'll analyze tunneling and translation risks, establish our IPv6 firewall design rules, and then wrap the whole thing up with a highly actionable security architect's checklist.
Section 1. The coexistence imperative. Why coexistence is unavoidable.
As an infrastructure architect, you already know this major design constraint. IPv4 address exhaustion? It's not a future threat. It's a concluded, historical event. The IANA free pool was completely depleted back in February 2011. By 2019, all 5 regional internet registries had completely exhausted their standard allocation pools. Fast forward to 2026, and roughly 45% of users are reaching Google services over natively routed IPv6. Major ISPs are operating IPv6 primary networks today. Transition fluency for security professionals, it's completely non-negotiable.
But here's the catch, right? We can't just magically flip a switch to an IPv6-only world. The reality of enterprise environments is that legacy OT and ICS systems, embedded industrial devices, and critical apps with hard-coded IPv4 assumptions simply cannot be rapidly replatformed. So, instead of a quick Band-Aid fix, we have to secure coexistence that is likely going to outlast many of our careers. It's measured in decades, not years.
Section 2. Transition mechanisms defined, setting the baseline. To secure this decades-long coexistence, we really have to understand the specific vehicles driving it. First up, we have dual stack. This involves running complete IPv4 and IPv6 network stacks simultaneously on every single node. On paper, sure, it's the simplest operational model. There's no translation overhead, and full end-to-end semantics are preserved. However, for a security architect, it literally doubles your policy surface, and crucially, it entirely fails to solve the actual IPv4 address exhaustion issue.
Second, there's tunneling. Technologies like 6-in-4, 6-to-4, and Teredo encapsulate one protocol inside the other just to cross incompatible routing infrastructure. The core risk here? Well, tunnels are a perimeter security architect's absolute nightmare. They encapsulate traffic in a way that effortlessly bypasses your standard IPv4 perimeter defenses and inspection points.
Third, we have translation. This includes stateful or stateless header conversions right at the network boundary. Think NAT64, enabling communication between protocol-incompatible endpoints. So the crucial point is that every single one of these transition mechanisms introduces a totally distinct, complex attack surface that demands mechanism-aware controls. Translators, by their very nature, completely break end-to-end integrity.
Section 3. The dual-stack danger. The firewall rule gap.
Let's take a look at the single most common and frankly terrifying dual-stack misconfiguration out there in the enterprise today. And this brilliantly illustrates the firewall rule gap. You might have an incredibly meticulous, lockdown IPv4 environment with beautifully detailed iptables rules. But right next to it, the IPv6 interface is wide open because the IP6 tables rule set, which is a completely separate entity, remember, was either forgotten entirely or left unpopulated. Your front door is double bolted, but the back door is swinging wide open.
Now, that firewall rule gap is just the first of 4 massive blind spots we need to talk about. Second, we have the scanner blind spot. If your security scanners are only targeting IPv4 inventories, a heavily fortified IPv4 service might be completely exposed to native IPv6 attacks without ever triggering a single alert. Third is socket binding. Applications binding to the IPv6 wildcard, represented by a double colon, listen on both stacks, so any security controls applied exclusively to the IPv4 path are bypassed entirely via IPv6. And finally, unintended activation. Modern Linux, Windows, and macOS systems enable the IPv6 stack by default. This instantly creates an unmonitored attack surface if you aren't actively managing it.
Section 4. Tunneling and translation risks. The attack surface.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is when we analyze the bypass risks of these specific mechanisms, the threat level becomes crystal clear. Take Teredo, for example. It carries a very high risk because it uses UDP NAT bypass techniques specifically designed to punch through your perimeter. 6-4 carries a high risk due to its anycast relay model, and even medium-risk technologies like 6 and 4 use Protocol 41, which standard firewalls just aren't going to inspect properly without explicit configuration.
The universal truth across all these mechanisms, and there are 11 tracked in the broader chapter, is that default IPv4 rule sets protect absolutely none of them. 0. Protocol 41, UDP port 3544 used by Teredo, and synthesized DNS records from DNS64 will silently bypass your standard IPv4 perimeter controls. You absolutely must have explicit, mechanism-aware firewall rules in place. No exceptions. Section 5. IPv6 Firewall Design Rules, First Principles.
So how do we actually secure this? Well, first, we have to accept that IPv4 rule sets do not just seamlessly transfer over. One of the biggest mental shifts here is addressing multiple addresses per interface. A typical IPv6 host doesn't just have one IP, it has a link local address, a globally unique address or GUA, potentially a unique local address, and one or more privacy or temporary addresses. Because source address selection, which is governed by RFC 6724, dictates outbound connections, firewall rules applied only to the GUA can easily be bypassed by an endpoint intelligently deciding to use its temporary address instead. You have to account for all of them.
Next, let's drill into ICMPv6 policy, guided by RFC 4890. In the IPv4 days, many admins just dropped all ICMP and called it a day. In IPv6, blocking all ICMPv6 is a catastrophic architectural mistake. It literally breaks the protocol. You must unconditionally permit Type 2 packet too big messages at every firewall tier to prevent path MTU discovery silent black holes. On the flip side, you absolutely must block the deprecated routing header type 0 to prevent amplification attacks. And always, always drop packets with excessive extension header chains because that's a very well-known evasion technique.
Section 6. The Security Architect's Checklist, Concrete Defenses.
Let's move to our final checklist and see how this all builds into a highly actionable playbook, starting right at Layer 2. You need to deploy Router Advertisement Guard based on RFC 6105 on all access switch ports, so only authorized routers can send RAs. Enable DHCPv6 Guard to permit server messages only from your trusted uplinks. Turn on Dynamic Neighbor Discovery Inspection to validate messages against your snooping table. And hey, for highly sensitive segments, definitely consider SEND for actual cryptographic authentication of those NDP messages. Now, if you're using translation mechanisms, you have to lock them down tight. Secure your NAT64 and DNS64 deployments with DNSSEC. And if a synthesized record fails validation, treat it as completely untrusted. You must rate limit NAT64 state creation per source IPv6 address, otherwise I guarantee you a single compromised host can cause state table exhaustion and take down your entire translator. For stateless translation like MAPT, validate those source addresses and ports at the border relay. Protect your infrastructure from spoofing at every transition boundary, and make sure to authenticate your DS Lite B4 elements via DHCPv6.
I want to leave you with this foundational truth, pulled directly from the source material. Every transition mechanism introduces a distinct attack surface. Tunnels bypass perimeter controls. Translators break end-to-end integrity. Dual stack doubles the policy surface. The reality is, there are absolutely no free passes in IPv6 coexistence. So, what does this all mean for you right now? I'm going to leave you with this vital, urgent question. Have you audited your IP6 tables entirely separately from your IP tables today? Or is your IPv6 backdoor already wide open? Take these RFC back designs back to your teams, close those gaps, and secure the transition. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.